What's up guys, Saf here on SuperSaf TV, and we've finally got the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. Just last year I was praising Sony for going for a more simpler naming convention with the Xperia 1, and they've just gone ahead and made everything confusing again. It looks like they're adopting their camera naming convention and having a Mark II after it. But anyway, Xperia 1 Mark II. So many requests to cover this on the channel. Let's go ahead, check it out, see what it's got to offer, and give it the proper SuperSaf style treatment. The usual branding here at the front. At the back, we have some of the key features. Now, Sony is going against the convention, so they're not doing what everybody else is doing, and they've kind of gone for a bit more of a unique approach. And we'll have to see if that's paid off. So inside the box, as well as the device, you get some paperwork, you get a USB Type-C to USB Type-C cable. There's an 18-watt fast charger, which is fast, but nowhere near as fast as a lot of the competition, where we've seen 25 watts, 40 watts, even up to 65 watts. But something that we don't see on the competition is a 3.5mm headphone jack. And you'll see here that we've got some 3.5mm earphones included. And that is because the Xperia 1 Mark II does have a 3.5mm jack, making it very, very unique. Even the Xperia 1 last year did not have a 3.5mm jack, so Sony have kind of gone back to this, and that is very interesting. Now, the Xperia 1 Mark II also has wireless charging. Again, it's not crazy fast like a lot of the competition. And here is the device. Let's get rid of stickers. And also the screen protector. So we've got a metal frame with glass panels on the front and back as expected. This is the black version. There is also a white as well as a purple, and it's just a plain black color. Sony haven't gone for any gradient finishes or anything like that we're seeing on many other devices right now. But the main thing on the Xperia 1 Mark II is this display, which is quite different to the punch-out high refresh rate displays that we're seeing right now. This is a 21:9 CinemaWide 4K HDR OLED display, and it's 6.5 inches. We've got a 60 Hz refresh rate, not 120 Hz or 90 Hz like we're seeing from the competitors. But Sony do have some motion blur reduction technology, which should make things seem smoother. Sony is saying almost like a 90 Hz display, but this is with software, not hardware. And we do have some top and bottom bezels, so we've not got a notch or a punch out or anything like that. Now, in terms of my first impressions of the display, it's very, very sharp thanks to that 4K resolution, sharper than pretty much anything else out there. What's most interesting about this display is that 21:9 aspect ratio. This is something that we saw on the Xperia 1 last year. What that means is this is very much catered towards watching that 21:9 content. So if you're watching a lot of movies, most movies do have an aspect ratio of 21:9. So that is very, very wide. And that way you're not going to be getting any black bars on the top and the bottom. But that does mean when you're watching 16:9 content, even 18:9 content, then you will be seeing black bars on the left and the right. Now, one other advantage that you get with a 21:9 screen is that it's not very wide, and it's actually quite comfortable to hold in one hand compared to other devices. So let's bring in a few of the devices to do a bit of a size comparison. So the first device we've got here is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, and you can straight away see that it's quite a bit wider. But you can also see that the bezels are quite a bit smaller. Now, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, once again, quite a bit wider, but it's also quite a bit shorter because of that taller aspect ratio that we've got on the Xperia 1 Mark II. And finally, looking at the Xperia 1 from last year, very, very similar in size because this also does have that 21:9 aspect ratio. Right, so that's the display and the size. Let's now talk about the cameras. So up front, we do have an 8 megapixel front-facing camera. It's got an f2.2 aperture, but we've got some interesting cameras at the back. So there are 4 cameras in total with 3 different focal lengths. All of the 3 different focal lengths are at 12 megapixels. So I do like that Sony have just gone with 12 megapixels across the board rather than going for a crazy high pixel number, when realistically speaking, you're still going to be shooting at 12 megapixels anyway. This is something that we see from many of the other competitors. The primary camera has an f1.7 aperture. It's got around a 24mm angle of view, which is pretty wide. And it has a 1/1.7 inch sensor size, which is pretty large, but definitely not as large as some of the others like the P40 Pro and the S20 Ultra. We've then got a telephoto camera, which has an f2.4 aperture, and that's got around about a 70mm angle of view. Now, a lot of other telephoto cameras, which are around at 2 times, have about a 50mm angle of view. This is a little bit more than that, so it's almost 3 times optical zoom. I would say around 2.8 to 3 times. We then have the ultra-wide camera with an f2.2 aperture and at around a 16mm angle of view. So in terms of field of view, that's around 124 degrees. And finally, we have a 3D eye time of flight sensor, which is going to help with depth information. You can see the Zeiss logo here because Sony do work with Zeiss for their optics. And Sony have really been talking about the autofocus capabilities of this smartphone. We do have real-time iAF, which is something that we see on a lot of these pro Sony cameras. Eye tracking, real-time, and this is supposed to work with humans as well as animals. In addition to that, we do have 20 frames a second burst shooting. So this is, I think, the fastest on any smartphone. It's really going to be able to capture a lot of moving action just by pressing and holding. Again, something that we see on a lot of pro cameras that Sony is bringing onto here. Now, in order to be able to take advantage fully of a lot of these camera features, we do have a few pro apps. So for photos, we do have Photo Pro, which will give you full manual controls over things like your shutter speed, your white balance, even your focus. And for video, we do have Cinema Pro, which once again gives you lots of manual controls, ISO, shutter speed, you've got lots of different looks, as well as the frames per second. So you can choose the correct frames per second for filmmaking, which is 24 frames a second, despite what Marquez might tell you. But if you want, you can choose 25, 30, or even 60 frames a second. There are also some audio levels here, so you can monitor your audio and things like that. And this does look like a very fully fledged cinema app. And if you are somebody who's into pro video and pro photography, then this is something that you're gonna really appreciate. Now, having said that, I'm particularly interested in how this will compare to some of the other competition. Having those pro modes is amazing, but for the general user, you wanna go out there and take some photos and you want the smartphone to do all of that processing for you. We've seen the likes of Google who use very simple hardware but do lots of software processing, capture multiple images and combine them to give you some great dynamic range and things like that. And this is something that, you know, I did criticize Sony for last year. Although the Pro app was great, when it did come to the regular app, it just didn't really hold up against the competition. So let's see this year whether the Xperia 1 Mark II is once again going to be a very niche smartphone for pro photographers and videographers, or if it's going to be something that's still going to be very usable for the rest of the public. Definitely let me know in the comments below which SuperSaf style camera comparison you'd like to see of the Xperia 1 Mark II versus. I'll also try to leave a poll up there so you can vote which one you'd like to see most. Now moving on, if we take a look around the device, at the bottom there is a USB Type-C input. On the right hand side, we've got a volume rocker. We've got a dedicated shutter button, which is quite nice. It'll allow you to use the smartphone in landscape mode and take pictures easily. There's also a power button which doubles up as a fingerprint scanner, and it seems to work fine, but it's definitely not as fast as others I've tested. There is a bit of an animation which seems to slow things down. On the top is that 3.5mm jack, which makes this very, very unique. We've got support for high resolution audio or even high resolution audio wireless with LDAC. And we've also got 360 reality audio. So Sony really putting an emphasis on the audio capabilities of this smartphone. Sony very experienced in the audio sector. On the left-hand side, we've got a tray, which you can actually just pull out like this. And this has space for a SIM card as well as a MicroSD card. Something else which we don't really see much of these days, so you can expand the storage on the Xperia 1 Mark II. It does already come with 256 gigabytes, so that is already quite a bit of storage. But if you are going to be taking lots of pro video on here, of course, you're going to be needing that storage. And having a microSD card means you can just pop it out and then pop it in to a laptop or something like that. Now, this is powered by the latest and greatest. So we do have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset along with the X55 modem. So 5G is enabled and we've got 8 gigabytes of RAM. So performance, I'm sure, is going to be absolutely fine. Sony also putting an emphasis on gaming. We've got some gaming features on here. And this is also compatible with Sony's DualShock 4 wireless controller. So you're going to be able to mount this on the controller and play your games on the smartphone via a controller, which may give you quite a bit of a competitive edge. For the software, we do have Android 10 with Sony's skin, but honestly speaking, I don't mind Sony's skin. It's very minimal. It's almost stock Android. We do have some additional features. So we've got the 21:9 multi-window feature, and this is going to allow you to take advantage of that very large display. And there's also side sense, which, you know, is okay. You can tap twice here on the side and it's going to bring up some shortcuts to your apps, which for me has always been a bit hit and miss. So it's, yeah, there you go. You kind of have to really hit it on the right marker, which I'm not a huge fan of and I don't find myself using too much, but hey, there is a feature that's there. For the battery, we do have a 4000 milliamp hour battery, which is quite a bit larger compared to what we had last year. I believe it was around 3300. So I'll see what the battery life is like in day-to-day usage. Of course, we do have that 4K display, so we'll see how well things are optimized. For pricing, this is going to be retailing for £1,100 or $1,200, which is definitely up there with all of the other flagships. And it's going to be really interesting to see if this is going to be a niche product just for a few people, or if it's really going to be something a bit more mainstream. What do you guys think of the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II? What other coverage would you like me to do with it? Do let me know in the comments below. If you want to see that future coverage and not miss out, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do hit that thumbs up button for me. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf TV, and I'll see you next time.